Now I want to bring in our legal panel, Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas, our Chief Legal Analyst Dan Abrams, also Kate Shaw, Professor of Constitutional Law at Cardozo Law School. And Pierre, let me begin with you. You've been talking to Homeland Security, talking to the FBI. What's their greatest concern about Election Day?
George, with the emotions running so high in a bitterly fought campaign against a backdrop of racial tensions and a pandemic, law enforcement is feeling the stress as we race toward Tuesday. There are several big buckets of concern. First, there's a real worry about white supremacists, anti-government extremists, and anarchists who might see such a toxic environment as an opportunity for violence. That recently discovered alleged plot to kidnap and possibly murder Governor Whitmer in Michigan was a wake-up call. There have been a number of suspected extremists placed under close surveillance by the FBI in recent days. And just last week, George, federal prosecutors charged 2 men with manufacturing illegal, hard-to-trace guns who are suspected of being neo-Nazis. They allegedly had a list of names to include prominent Black Lives Matter leaders, and there's always concerns before an election about lone wolf extremists of all sorts. There have been at least 2 men recently arrested who discussed harming Biden. No specific threat identified, but it's a volatile environment, George.
Still a lot of focus on foreign interference as well, especially from Russia and Iran.
Yes, lots of concern about Russia and Iran, and there's real concern not just about Election Day. There's concern that they might try to sow disinformation right after the election while we wait for the results. So law enforcement put out a bulletin in the last couple of days warning that they might deface websites, create new websites, and sow disinformation on social media, George.
Thank you, Pierre. Lots of questions about what's going to happen on Election Day, what's going to happen as the votes are counted after Election Day. Dan Abrams, let's start out with this whole question about potential voter suppression, voter intimidation. What constitutes illegal voter intimidation? What should we be looking for on Election Day?
Well, look, under federal law, it involves intimidation, coercion, threatening. But it doesn't just have to be someone showing up with a weapon and threatening someone literally. There are more subtle ways that you can engage in voter intimidation, which would be a violation of federal law. For example, pretending to be a poll worker, asking people questions about, for example, citizenship, making false threats about the results of voter fraud. Anyone who is sort of faking it at a polling place could also be accused of voter intimidation. The goal, though, when you're intimidating someone in voting, is not just to prevent them from voting, but also to prevent them from voting for the person that they choose.
And Kate, we're already seeing some efforts to disqualify ballots. You saw that lawsuit filed down in Texas overnight trying to disqualify 100,000 ballots from people who voted in curbside voting.
Right. So, I think that both voter intimidation and voter suppression efforts are underway. As to intimidation, I have to say the threat is very serious, but so far, with 92 million Americans having cast their votes, many of them early in person, it's actually not something we've seen on a widespread basis, right? I do think that one point to make is that the election is actually going quite smoothly under these very challenging circumstances. Sort of the fundamental architecture of our electoral system, again, is performing remarkably well. So, we definitely will see issues arise on Election Day. There could be voter intimidation. There will definitely be long lines. There could be problems with ballots or machines. And that's not to discount the seriousness of any of that. But I don't think any of it will go to the kind of fundamental integrity of the election result. I think Americans so far can feel really confident about how the election is going, notwithstanding the issues that might arise. But you're right, these lawsuits, George, in particular the ones that seek to invalidate votes that have already been counted, in some ways are the most significant threat that we face in this election. And courts injecting uncertainty and chaos into the system seems to be the biggest threat we're looking at right now.
So what is the biggest thing you're going to be looking for once the ballots start getting counted on Tuesday night at 7 p.m.?
I think that for me, it all depends on how close. Sorry,
go ahead, Kate, and then Dan answer too.
Sure. Sorry, George. For me, I think it depends on how close things are. I think that if there is a decisive win, the fact that it's going to take a while to know who won a state like Pennsylvania might not matter because things just break in a way that makes the result clear based on other state returns. But if things are very close, and if it does, say, come down to Pennsylvania, I think we all just need to hunker down and be patient. Pennsylvania has over 2 million voters who have voted absentee. None of those votes have been opened or counted yet because they can't be under Pennsylvania law. So it just will take a little time, and the kinds of challenges that we've seen already arise out of Pennsylvania, challenges, say, to ballots that arrive after Election Day, which right now are lawful under Pennsylvania law, as the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has articulated it, could be subject to renewed challenge, potentially including in the U.S. Supreme Court.
Dan Abrams?
Yeah, typically before the election, the challenges you would see are how are the votes going to be counted? What are the rules going to be? But yet in this election, we're already seeing challenges to actual ballots, actual votes that have already occurred. That's what you're going to see after the election, is going to be, were those rules implemented correctly? And did they execute them properly in the various states? And as Kate points out, the fact that you already have a number of states literally segregating ballots based on when they are going to arrive. So ballots that arrive after Election Day, which they think are going to count, but they're not 100% sure if they're going to count, particularly in a state like Pennsylvania, will certainly leave everyone on edge and leave open the possibility of major legal challenges.
And I know you all will be with us all night long on Tuesday. Thank you both very much. Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.